Back on MorningLine, our final segment. If you'd like to join as we talk national politics, 737-7587. We had some calls this morning. And Professor Schwartz, just a question for you. Some people wonder about the power of executive orders. Former President Trump used them quite a bit. And now it seems like President Biden is as well. And I think a lot of people say, well, does the executive order bypass the power of Congress? And, is there an overlap here? And is it too much power for a president? Maybe define an executive order and the role it plays in our government.
Well, an executive order is the president acting on his constitutional authority to deal with issues that in which he does not have to go to Congress, particularly for funding or for other issues. So President Obama also used executive orders. It is probably becoming particularly a feature of our divided government and of our polarized situation these days, that in effect, because presidents often don't have support in Congress, that they choose, in fact, to use executive orders to carry out various types of political policies that are important to their constituents, to their base. President Trump used this particularly, for example, on immigration. He used it on the transgender prohibitions, where he was appealing in a way, using his executive authority to do something that would have been difficult to get congressional support for, but which then enhanced its appeal to his political base. And President Biden is, in effect, reversing those. And this is where we are in a situation now in which presidents really do reverse policies of the previous political party in a way that was less common in the era of the Cold War and in a period of more greater bipartisan consensus.
So some of them that we've seen now with Joe Biden, transgender. I don't know if he's addressing some of the immigration issues as well. These are things he can do immediately. And is it also something that he can do now and then, later on too, Congress can act more significantly? Is that how that works? Talk maybe about
exactly the case.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly the case with the immigration law, because basically he was reversing the policy on DACA that the president had, and essentially saying to Congress, now fix this situation. In effect, by reversing it and calling for a path to citizenship, now saying Congress pass an immigration law. And I think that would be the upshot of what the executive orders are designed to do.
And with regard to the fence and the wall, I guess the border wall, it's been stopped. Now there's no indication, and I don't know why, at this point, there would be to tear it down, of course, but it looks like Joe Biden said we're not spending any more money on this right now, and it's stopped for now. Is that part of going to be his policy now? I just wonder, what more do you think will happen with regard to that? It's so interesting that border wall was, in my opinion, the keystone issue that just got a lot of play and helped Trump get elected president the first time around. It was, and it kind of faded from the picture with time, and certainly his promise to get Mexico to pay for it never came to fruition. But there is a good portion of wall down there. What happens now?
Well, that's the interesting thing. And I think in a way, Biden has indicated that he wants to take a very different approach to immigration. But the question of what type of approach to immigration, how many people, for example, should be coming in from Central America. You may have also heard that he evidently said to the Mexican president that the United States is interested in spending some $4 billion to help in Central American development so that people don't want to come to the United States, don't have to come to the United States. So there's a multitude of things going on here. The wall probably won't be torn down, but it will be left there. And there is the question of whether it might become a negotiating object if Congress, if some Republicans say, well, finish the wall and we'll give you something else on immigration. So there are a lot of things going on here in terms of the legislative process that will go on. I would love to see some type of legislative solution to immigration, but I would not bet the farm on it.
Gotcha. Let's go to Ricky. Ricky, good morning. Hi, Ricky.
Good morning.
Morning.
I got two questions. One, are we going to get another stimulus package, like $1,400? And I've been hearing where he may just give everybody on disability Social Security $200 extra for now. Is that right?
Okay, well, you mentioned earlier, Professor, that they've got another plan that they'd like to see in place, to stimulus or to help with the economy, but that's going to have a tough battle with some of the Republicans in the House and Senate. But yeah, the talk is, and I haven't heard about the $200. Maybe you have, but I have heard about an additional stimulus payment that could be $1,200, $1,400 that they're talking about.
Well, what's happening is there is some negotiation going on about the income levels in which the stimulus would be given, maybe reducing the numbers of people who would get the $1,400 by setting a lower income level for that. But I think this is a key priority of the Biden administration. And so they have talked about using different legislative tactics similar to what was used, for example, to pass Obamacare without 60 votes, so that the Democrats could conceivably pass the stimulus package with only the 51 votes in the Senate, as well as their narrow House majority. So even though there is some pushback by the Republicans over the costs, this is a high priority. So I think there will be some type of stimulus, but I'm not sure how extensive it will be or whether the entire $1,400 will go out to everyone who got the original $600.
Yeah, and you do wonder about this. I mean, it's not just the payments, the $600 that many people did receive already, the second stimulus payment. And of course, for many folks, that money was gone before they even received it. They had it spent, of course, and had to pay things off. I mean, it needs to be more than just sending checks to American citizens, I think. And it's much more the plan than just those checks. And again, I think you're right in terms of who receives that money. Does it go to all Americans, or should it just go to those who have lost jobs, or that those that are in a realm that really need the money because their industry has been hurt? I mean, that I can see some of the argument Republicans make. I mean, there's a lot of people out there living on fixed incomes. I know COVID affects us all one way or the other, but if you're out there on Social Security, and you have been all along, and COVID hit, and you're at home living on Social Security, well, where did COVID damage those people on Social Security is my question. Okay, whereas opposed to someone who was working, has lost a job, has 3 kids at home, has no money, can't get unemployment. Well, they're the ones I understand need it. When, I mean, I see the Republicans may be arguing, well, we don't need to give everyone checks again because not everyone was affected equally by COVID.
That is, I think, the issue is they will raise the question of how extensive the $1,400 does have to appear. But of course, that could be problematic because the Democratic progressive wing really wanted even more than the $1,400, and so that could create problems, I think, within the political process. So my own sense, though, is that they're going to push ahead with this, and that they may try to use various techniques to push this as a simple majority measure and go with the 51 votes in the narrow majority and try to get that $1,400 out to the people before the pandemic also subsides, so that there's still the sense that this money is needed. Yeah,
so I mean, I guess an answer to Ricky and many other people who really would welcome that additional money, and I understand they need it, maybe then it would come sometime early spring if it passes. I mean, it could be soon. I mean, we just wrapped up that $600, but again, the $600 was just such a small amount, really. I mean, $600 is a lot of money to me, but I mean, for what a lot of people are facing. And so, but even that $1,400, that's going to help some through it, but money needs to be spent on economic development, small businesses, things like them to keep them afloat and create jobs and all along those lines. But maybe another check coming within the next few months. Could be that soon.
Yeah, I think I think this is one of those 100-day things too, that the Biden administration needs to get this while they still have the honeymoon, while they still have a lot of the momentum. And I think if they wait too long, if this gets tied up, there will be an easing of the fears of the pandemic as the vaccines increase, and that could damage the ability politically to get the stimulus passed.
And it's crazy to talk about it now, but you know that both parties are already thinking about it 4 years from now. Real quick, just for kicks, as we look ahead, okay? Now, I assume in 4 years, if Joe Biden is still healthy and well, he will run for re-election. And that maybe explains that. On the Republican side, 4 years from now, I mean, there are folks who I believe have been angling for the presidency over the last several months based on their, behavior and what they did in the last few weeks, trying to cultivate, support from the Trump folks. What do you think? Who's front runners right now, aside from President Trump, should he choose to run again for the presidency, to run in 4 years for Republicans?
Among the Republicans out there, I do think someone like Nikki Haley will get a lot of attention because of her South Asian background and the fact that she's an unusual, as a woman and as a Republican, has a high profile from her role in the UN. She will get some attention because of the possibility of being able to gain voters to the Republican brand that were turned off by Trump and some of his behavior. But she'll have to be careful because, of course, she was in the Trump administration, but has been mildly critical of him. So I think she's there. I do think some of the other senators. I do think Mike Pence will give it a try, but I think a lot will depend on events and developments over the next period, especially the role of Donald Trump and how he manages his post-presidency.
And, the person I thought really was angling and is just thinking exclusively along these lines is Ted Cruz. And I'm just wondering if Senator Cruz has taken too many negatives along with maybe some of the positives. I think some of the Trump supporters may, lean toward him because he kind of stood by him through a lot of this now. But right. I'm wondering about Ted Cruz if he's also suffered too much damage from some of the way he's handled things, especially during the insurrection.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I guess that he did not come to mind because I do think his brand has been damaged by him still being such an ardent supporter as the insurrection took place. And I think he's going to face a very tough Senate race in Texas. Of course, he would come up for re-election in Texas in 2024, and he would have a choice between running for the Senate again or running for the presidency. And he probably will try and run, I would think, for the presidency, maybe trying to gather Trump's support, which is very ironic given the behavior between the two of them back in 2016.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's crazy because, there's no love lost. Hey, listen, Professor, thanks so much for joining us today. It's always an interesting conversation, and we'll continue to follow what happens and hopefully talk again sometime soon. You take care of yourself.
Thank you very much for having me on the program.
Thank you, Professor. All right, we'll take a break, and I'll be back with a programming note right after this. Stay with us.
News Channel 5 and SHR Talent want you to be your best as you start your video